Once upon a time there lived a very old woodsman with his very old wife. They lived in a tiny cottage next to a very rich man's orchard, so close so that a pear tree hung over the old woodsman's wall. Now the rich man had agreed with the old couple that, should any pears fall off into their garden, the old couple could keep and eat. So each day the poor old couple would look out and pray for any strong wind or flying fox to dispatch any ripe pears from the trees. The old wife would grumble each day and profess they would die as beggars. So she took to giving her husband naught but dry, flat bread. One day the woodsman, terribly frail and in dire need of a decent meal, declared he would no longer work unless his wife made him kitchari for supper. So with very bad grace the wife took some rice and pulse, some ghee and spices, and began to cook some savory, buttery kitchari. What an appetizing smell it had! The woodsman stood doe-eyed, licking his lips in wanton anticipation. "Oh, no," cried the old wife, "not before you've brought in another bundle of wood. And mind, it is a good one. You'll have to work for your dinner." So the old man set out into the forest and began chopping and hacking, all the while whetting his appetite and thinking of the delicious kitchari to come. Just as he was swinging his axe again, an inquisitive bear, overhearing the thrashing in the wood, came through the trees and bid the old man good tidings. "Peace be with you, friend," spoke the bear. "What may you do with that very large bundle of wood you have collected?" "It is for my wife," returned the woodsman, "for she has made such a delightful kitchari for supper, and if I bring a good bundle, she is sure to provide me a good portion. Oh, my dear fellow, you should have smelled that kitchari." At this the bear's mouth began to water, for all bears are gluttons. "Do you think your wife would give me some too, if I brought her some wood?" inquired the bear. The crafty old woodsman looked at the bear. "Perhaps, if it was a very big load, would for hundredths do?" quizzed the bear. "Oh, I'm afraid that would be too little. As you see, my dear old wife has been toiling all day." "Would 800ths do?" the bear tried again, looking longingly at the woodsman. "Oh, no, that wouldn't do. You see, my wife has added so much buttery ghee. How about, say, half a ton, and it's a deal," quipped the woodsman. "Half a ton," sighed the bear, "is quite a load." "There is saffron in the kitchari," remarked the woodsman casually. The bear licked his lips and his eyes twinkled. "That be a bargain. Go home sharp and tell your wife to keep the kitchari hot." Away went the woodsman with glee, off to tell his wife that he had agreed with the bear a half-ton of wood for a share of the kitchari. The old wife, not wanting to allow her husband the satisfaction, understood that the bear's wood would keep them for the entirety of the winter and would still leave them a plenty spare to sell for food. But, as was her way, she continued to grumble and complain, for her husband had not settled on an exact share of the kitchari, for, as was the way of the bear, he would gobble the lot in an instant. The woodsman grew quite pale. We had better begin now, and have a fair start. So without more ado, they both squatted down on the floor around the brass pot full of kitchari, and began to eat as fast as they could. Remember to leave the bear his share, the woodsman said to his wife with his mouth crammed. Certainly, certainly, she replied, helping herself to another handful. My dear, cried the woman in her turn, with her mouth so full she could hardly talk. Remember the poor bear. Certainly, certainly, my love, returned the old man, taking another mouthful. And so it went on, till there was naught left in the pot. What's to be done now? Said the woodsman. It is all your fault, retorted his wife scornfully. You ate twice as much as I. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. Men always eat more than women. No, they don't. Yes, they do. Well, it's no use quarreling about it now, said the woodsman. The kitchari is gone, and the bear will be furious. That wouldn't matter much if we can get the wood, said the greedy old woman. I'll tell you what we must do. We must lock everything there's to eat in the house, save for the empty pot of kitchari, and we can hide in the attic. When the bear comes, he will think we have left, and when he finds the pot empty, he will of course rampage about the place. But there's little damage he can do, for we are poor, and with few possessions. But he will have brought the wood with him, and won't take the trouble of carrying away all the wood away again. So they made haste and locked away all the food, and hid themselves away. Meanwhile the bear had been toiling away in the wood, and by day's end he arrived, quite exhausted, to the woodcutter's cottage. Throwing down his load, he entered into the cottage. Seeing no one in sight, he looked upon the empty brass pot, and in a rage he turned the woodsman's cottage topsy-turvy, till he had quite tired himself out. Finally, he declared he would take all the wood again, but as the crafty old woman had said, he was too tired after cutting all the wood. But I won't leave empty-handed, so he seized the empty pot, and as he left, he caught sight of the pear tree hanging over into the yard. The first of the season, he bet. The bear, famished, clambered up the wall and into the tree in a jiffy, and grabbed the ripest-looking pear, and before he put it into his mouth, he had a thought. If I take the ripe ones with me in this pot, I can sell them to the other bears, and with the money I can buy me some delicious kitchari. Ha ha! How clever I am! So the bear began to pick the ripest pears, and placed them into his pot. He looked upon the unripe pears, and thought, none would buy these. So he popped them into his mouth and ate them, making wry faces if they were to sour. All the while the old woodsman and his wife, watching the bear, through a crevice, the old wife holding her mouth for fear of discovery. But the poor old wife, being an asthmatic, and having a terrible cold in her head, couldn't help herself, and she let out the almightiest hachoo. The bear in the tree, thinking a huntsman had spied him and taken shot, fell out of the tree and fled into the woods as fast as he could, leaving the pot and all the ripe pears. So the woodsman and his wife were left with the pot and all the pears, but the bear left with naught but an upset stomach from eating all the unripe pears